All right, let's do it. Here we go. What is this? The game plan, Ben? The game
Yeah,
plan?
that's what they're
Game
calling it.
plan, right? All right,
That's
it's the game plan. Welcome to it. The game plan. Dave Lochran, Ben Rasa, bringing you a really interesting Sunday slate here. Ben, the first thing that really comes to mind, and we're going to go game by game. I also have a couple ideas towards the end of the show. Just talk about a couple off the radar games that we seem to like more than others. I have a couple this week, a couple games that really aren't getting much attention or much love that I'm probably going to go heavier on. But I'll tell you something. Crunched 150 lineups, which is a lot easier because you're putting it, you're setting exposures, you're making groups, you're right, you're doing all different kind of stacks and stuff, but you're not hand making lineups where like each position feels that much more important. And then I go to hand make some lineups because I have like the three maxes and everything.
mhm.
So much more difficult this week.
Yeah, I only make my lineups by hand, and it's been brutal. I don't know. I know we're only 2 weeks in, but this week is a totally different animal in the sense of last week when I built. I rarely ran into roadblocks where I had to go backwards and mix it up. Everything fit pretty nicely. This week, I have not made a team where I haven't had to backtrack and bump someone down just to get the salary, and you're forced into some really difficult decisions.
Yeah, you certainly are. And I think as we go through the games, that'll be evidence of it. Let's start with Atlanta and Carolina. You got Cam Newton and Matt Ryan here. The Falcons suffered some like serious injuries to the defensive side last week, and I think that should play a big role here. But on the other side of this game, Carolina, they are pretty big dogs on the road against this Falcons team. I mentioned to you before the show that I do have interest in Julio this week, quite a bit of interest actually. But I also think that Tevin Coleman will certainly be a popular play. What do you make of this Atlanta offense here going up against Carolina? It's because Carolina, their defense it's not putrid, but it can be had. There are holes here, and you have a lot of weapons. I think Atlanta shows up like they did not last Thursday.
Yeah, I mean they got a lot of. They're coming home. They have a long break because they did play Thursday. Pretty good spot. I think Coleman's certainly a cash play. I don't mind him. The workload will be there, and I'm with you, Julio. It's not at the expense of AB, and we'll talk about that because I
Right.
absolutely love him. But I also think that Julio is in a great spot, and I did make sure I got some of him, and that kind of funneled me into more Matt Ryan than I thought I would have. That's not something I look to do. So I do have more Falcons exposure, and that's because this is, I know you just alluded, for me, this is a game that I think could be sneaky high scoring. I like this game a lot more than most.
Yeah, so do I. But I guess maybe where we differ is I want to like the other side of it if it's going to be high scoring. I'm just having a really, really tough time, you know, jamming in McCaffrey and Funchess and I don't know, Ian Thomas. I'm having a tougher time on the other side of this game, getting in the complementary pieces from Carolina. What about you here? Are you good with those guys?
Definitely higher than you are, but it is tricky. I do have concerns, especially on the outside. Funchess doesn't instill a lot of confidence. I have a good amount of McCaffrey, though. I think last week we saw what was a pretty bottom percentage, outcome for him, and it was magnified that everyone else 5x their salary. So it wasn't like he played absolutely horrible. He still basically saw 10 targets. He had some goal line work. And you mentioned Deion Jones being out is a serious thing. That's who would have been on him. Carolina is not good against, the running backs who can catch the ball. I think they lean on him. The offensive line is banged up, and that is scary for him and Cam. But I don't mind McCaffrey. He's the guy I'm really looking to on the Panthers.
No, me too. If there is one of them, it's McCaffrey.
Yeah.
And in terms of exposure, I think I'm going to probably have like 15, 20% of him, which I think is a pretty reasonable number. Uh, Ron Rivera also mentioned that he's looking to get him like 15 to 20 carries and 6 to 10 receptions. I always find it comical when coaches say that because, like, you're the touches you're giving them are based on how the game is flowing, right?
Of
And
course. Yeah.
Right. So, okay, you still want to get him 15 to 20 touches if you're down by 20, like or carries, I mean. But the good thing about McCaffrey is he is game script proof. Like, if they're playing from behind, McCaffrey's still going to get work in the passing game. He saw 9 targets in a game that they never trailed last week, and just it's nice to know that you have pretty much reliable production or at least volume from him. And I say it all the time. I care more about volume than anything else. Like, give me, give me McCaffrey's volume over, hoping that Bilal Powell breaks off a 60-yard reception and gets like 5 carries. It's just, you're give me the volume all day long, and then I'll work from there.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that, we've seen it's transitioned fully now where there are no teams that maybe a couple, but most of the time the volume isn't like it was where everyone had a running back who was touching the ball 30 times in a game. Now those spots are such a hot commodity. And when you have a guy like McCaffrey, Olsen's obviously not playing. Him and Cam are going to have to do the heavy lifting. I don't really see many ways where Carolina can put up points without one of them really doing most of the damage.
Talk to me about Tevin Coleman here, though, because you're talking about a guy that is likely going to get the lion's share of work. Not even likely, unless this guy gets hurt. He is the guy, right? I mean, you have
Mhm.
Ito Smith serving as Coleman's backup, but with Freeman out, like that Coleman is going to be the one with the monster workload. Plus, we've seen it in the past. I think there have been 3 games that Freeman's missed over the past couple of years that Coleman took over and was the lead back. And obviously the volume in all of them was heavy. And last week against the Eagles, granted they were playing from behind towards the end, but he saw 51% of the snaps with Freeman playing 56%. So that it's just, I wouldn't be surprised if he sees around 80 to 85% of running back snaps, at least 75%.
Yeah, he's obviously going to get an uptick in work. Ito Smith, who I know little about, Southern Miss dude, I think he can catch the ball more than carry it. Again, I have him in cash. I think that's easy. I'm not sure how high the ceiling is, though, to be honest. I do think that Carolina is going to be able to move the ball here. And maybe it's wishful thinking, think that Matt Ryan and Julio, even Sanu, if you want to go off the grid, maybe pick up some of Devontae Freeman's production. Obviously they're not going to be carrying the ball, but maybe they disperse it where they're a little more aggressive through the air.
So how much exposure are you talking about here? Because mind you, the one big thing with Tevin Coleman is that he's going to have the same workload as most lead backs, but he's also marked down across the board, 59 on FanDuel, 53 on DraftKings. So you are getting a considerable discount on this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I have him in cash, which, if you do percentage of my overall dollars is going to account for more ownership than what he grades out as. I have about 20% across the board, though, which I think will be in line close to the field. So it's not a big stand, but it's certainly a guy that I have in play.
All right, fair enough. Let's move on then. I think in tournaments right now, I have about 30 to 35%
So
of
you're
Coleman.
definitely getting over there, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to be even with the field, either under or over, and I think 35 to 40 is where I'll sit. I feel a little bit sketchy about it because there are so many running backs that I like this week, but he's also pretty cheap, so I really don't mind going down there with value. It's similar to Connor last week, whereas I think the volume will be there, and if that's the case, I have no problem latching on. All right, Washington and Indianapolis. Let's get to the second one here. Andrew Luck and Alex Smith. Alex Smith popping in a lot of our projections this week against this inferior Colts defense that ranked dead last in pass defense DVOA just a season back and really made no adjustments to their secondary heading into this season. Talk to me about this Washington offense that just bludgeoned the Arizona Cardinals last week with AP on the ground, or AD on the ground, Chris Thompson through the air and on the ground, and even Jordan Reed got in on the action.
Yeah, Alex Smith he's good. He's always lost in the shuffle, but he's a quality quarterback. He's flat 6K this week at home. You mentioned the Colts secondary is just bad. Their whole defense is bad. I don't mind the spot at all. It's another guy that when I first kind of looked at the slate, I didn't think I would be heavily invested in the Redskins. but I have a good amount. I like Smith. You talked about Chris Thompson, viable to pair them up because he's such a threat in the passing game. Jordan Reed, while he's healthy, I'll continue to buy. I think that price rises as we see, him progress here. The guys on the outside, I'm not super high on. It's just very difficult to peg, Crowder and Doxson and those guys, but
Yeah.
don't mind the Redskins as a whole.
Yeah. When it comes to Dotson, when it comes to Richardson and Crowder, I have some of them
Mhm.
because if I'm playing Alex Smith, I'm looking to pair him. Obviously, Thompson's fine, Reed is fine, but I'm gonna sprinkle them in, and I think that's probably the way to do it with these guys because it's not unrealistic to assume that one of them does have a big game. It's just the idea of trying to peg who it's going to be is near impossible.
Absolutely. Yeah. If I was running more lineups, I would absolutely sprinkle the other weapons because I wouldn't be stunned if one of them has the game. It's just trying, like you just said, trying to pick which one is tricky. So I kept it more generic, paired him up with Reed, paired him up with Thompson, who I know the volume will be there for.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thompson probably my favorite from this side of the ball, and Reed is not a bad play either. Um, Although if I'm playing Reed, I'm likely that's probably going to be a two tight end lineup because
Yep.
go
All
ahead.
my Reed is two tight end.
Yeah, because if you're paying 5K for a tight end, let's say on DraftKings, and you have the George Kittle at 38, or I'll even throw Ricky Seals Jones or Johnny Smith, like a lot of cheap guys. That's the one way you can work in the other expensive players that you really want in your lineup. And there are so many of them this week.
Yeah, I looked to build balance and it just wasn't happening. I like the 8K range and I like the 4K and 3K range. It had to funnel me there. I wasn't able to make effective teams, going in that hitting the 6K range really hard and keeping it balanced. So to do that, you need to find savings. And unless you have some secret gems, which I hope you do, I couldn't find much outside of tight end in terms of punting a spot.
I have a couple. I don't know if they're gems,
Good.
but they're going to
Well,
be in my lineups. I'll tell
as
you
long
that
as
much.
they're active, just give them to me and we'll let it fly.
We'll get to them for sure. I got a few that I won't say I feel confident about, but I'm going to pull the trigger on them anyway because when you have some lineups that have Julio and AB and like Gurley, I don't know if I've done. I don't know if that's doable. Maybe it is. I will see.
That's
But you know what I'm saying. A
yeah.
lot of high price guys, you got to go cheap, and that's why two tight end is not the craziest approach today. How about the other side of this game? The Colts in Washington against the Washington defense. That look, yeah, they were playing Bradford. Bradford was garbage, and in my opinion, the guy's pretty bad. I know you and I have and Andrew have slightly different opinions. I'm just not a believer whatsoever in Sam Bradford. But still, they looked decent. And you know what? This is an Andrew Luck that we saw last week under Frank Reich's offense. Like they're trying to limit the deep ball right now. I don't know if it's because they don't think that he has the arm strength right now because coming back from that injury that kept him out a full calendar year, or he just wants to run this West Coast system with guys like Naeem Hines. Now that Marlon Mack is back, Ryan Grant, T.Y. Hilton. Like T.Y. Hilton running a lot of shorter routes last week. So I do think that's worth pointing out and will impact the offense, but it might make Luck less volatile as well.
I think it's a fair point. This is a tricky team. It's not one I'm super interested in. It seems like they have a lot of weapons in decently bad spots, and they're on the road in a game that I think they will be trailing. So if you do want to play catch up, I guess you could go there. But ultimately, I kept it pretty much on the Redskins side, and I'll go as far to say not towards the top, but I do have a little Redskins defense. I think they can get to Luck, cause some
So do I.
pressure, and that's really where I'm going. I don't. T.Y. Hilton is another one. I don't look at road home splits, but he's one of the guys I do factor that in a bit. He really prefers to be in the dome.
Agreed. I have some Washington too. You're getting them at a discount.
Yeah.
I was impressed by them last week. Again, the caveat there is they were facing Sam Bradford, but still, I don't think it's a bad spot. Again, I don't think Luck is going to be as volatile this year. If Frank Reich continues to run this type of offense, it was markedly different than we've seen in the past. But I still think it's a pretty good spot. Also, if you're talking value, I don't think Ryan Grant is the worst play here. facing his former team. Last week, Grant saw he saw almost 80% of snaps, the second most among wide receivers behind Hilton. He also saw 9 targets. Now, granted, Ryan Grant is not somebody, once again, talking about this West Coast offense, not someone that's going to have, he's not going to lead the league in air yards, put it that way. But in PPR, full point PPR, I don't think Ryan Grant is the worst play at 4,300 against his former team. But then again, really just a dart throw because I think you're not touchdowns here for a Ryan Grant type are going to be few and far between, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a week and it's hard to project this, but if it's very difficult scoring and 3x is very bad, he's the kind of guy he kind of has the Amendola feel of he's going to get some targets, might rack up some short passes.
Right.
If 4 or 5x is where you're going, Ryan Grant is probably not going to be where you want to turn, just because I do think the ceiling is relatively limited.
Exactly. And also, do we have Marlon Mack news?
I think he's I want to say trending towards playing is what I saw. But what does this say? They're optimistic that he'll suit up. Again, it's just such a murky situation. I'm kind of just taking a wait and see. I'm not looking to be early on that one.
Yeah. I'll read these off quickly. Patriots, Sonny Michel expected to play. I don't know what his I don't know in what fashion, or what capacity, but expected to play. And Burkhead is likely to play, but needs to clear pregame warm-ups without any setbacks, according to Adam Schefter. DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller are questionable, but both active. I don't think you have any worries there with DeAndre Hopkins. We've seen this a lot in the past. And Leonard Fournette, according to Chris Mortensen, unlikely to play, testing his hamstring around noon, but he is unlikely to play. So that's another big one there. And then Titans quarterback Marcus Mariota didn't do much throwing in pregame warmups. He continues to struggle to grip the football. Is looking more like Blaine Gabbert will wind up starting versus the Texans, but no official word just yet. So I think those are some of the big ones right now. And that's anything else? Do we have Aaron Rodgers news yet? I don't believe we do.
I think he's in the Hopkins category where it seems like he's playing. I don't see many ways he doesn't play.
I think so too. You also have Travis Benjamin questionable, could help like a Terrell Williams or particularly a Mike Williams just to get one body off the field. So yeah, there you go. And the last thing, the Titans, this is huge. They're missing both of their offensive tackles. And I think they're starting their 4 and 5 tackles. That's not good. So starting undrafted guys and such, whether it's Gabbert or Mariota, they could have a tough time. And I think that ends up helping a Dion Lewis type as we get to that game right now. We'll start with Tennessee facing Houston. It's a shame because Corey Davis saw 13 targets, was easily the most heavily targeted player on the Titans last week, Ben. And he played 91% of the snaps, which is a positive sign, 34% market share. But, God, it's tough with this situation right now. Their offense seems to be in shambles.
This is a mess. This game is definitely going to be one that if I could just pick one game where it doesn't kill me, this would be towards the top. I feel like no matter what I do, I'm going to be in trouble. I have a little Corey Davis. Jonnu Smith was a guy that I think was a natural person to put in play when Delaney went down. But now this is a tough situation. You mentioned they are really hurting on the offensive line. Gabbert probably going to be under center. I'm pretty cautious with this one. I do have some of the Titans. Dion Lewis is another one I think you can look to. But at the same time, I wouldn't fault anyone for going Texans defense. It's a tricky spot.
Yeah. I was just going to mention that. You're absolutely right. Texans defense is cheap. You should be able to get a pass rush on this makeshift line. It makes me like them even more, honestly. I wasn't huge on them earlier, but I think Texans defense makes a lot of sense here. Now, you said this is a game you don't see will kill you. This is one of my off-the-board games, but it's on the Texans side. I think Deshaun Watson at 6,300 to go pretty, vastly overlooked given last week's performance. I mean, the guy has dual threat upside, right? He still rushed for 40 yards last week. did not have a good game, but draws a much better matchup this week. The ball's going to be in his hands a lot. Not going to lie, I have a lot of interest in the Watson-Hopkins connection here. Hopkins historically crushes this Tennessee team, and I just think if there were ever a spot for Watson to bounce back, it'll come against a Tennessee defense that, for all intents and purposes, should get beat up here. They had a bottom 8 ranked pass defense DVOA last year. However, the run defense was not bad whatsoever. Yeah, I actually have a decent amount of Watson and Hopkins this week because I think they will be off the radar a little bit.
I think so too. I don't have much of either of them, but I see it. It was just a situation where, and we'll talk about this at the end, how you did that, because if you go to Hopkins, it gets a little tricky unless you're sacrificing some AB. So yeah, I
did sacrifice a bit. I did sacrifice about. I have about, I think, 55% Brown.
What I ended up doing, I did the same, but it was towards Julio.
Okay.
I
have some Julio too.
Yeah, I have some Matt Ryan to Julio, and I think that's what did it with Deshaun and Hopkins. And I see that. You have any interest in Lamar Miller?
It's tough. I think Lamar Miller at his price is actually remotely enticing because if we don't, okay, so we know that there's a positive correlation between defense and running backs, right? Mm-hmm. So, positive defense points and running backs. I think Lamar Miller is an interesting play. He lost some weight, put on some muscle, looked really solid against the Patriots. I was pretty impressed with what we saw from him. We know that he's better despite a small sample size with Deshaun Watson at the helm. And he's just, he's cheaper than he should be. I mean, Lamar Miller's $5,400 on DraftKings. I think it's tough. It's kind of tough to get him in. But, you mentioned Tevin Coleman and having him in cash more than tournaments. Lamar Miller makes for a very interesting pivot off of Coleman on DraftKings where they're only $100 separated.
I have some Lamar Miller, and for that exact reason, I think that he's in a pretty decent spot. The price is good enough where it doesn't cripple the rest. And I did want some exposure this game. I had no, like I said, I didn't mention no Hopkins. Will Fuller, he's always a Tyreek Hill super upside, but I'm not going there. So yeah, I do have that for the Texans, but that's about it if I'm being honest.
All right. So yeah, I'm gonna have some of this game mostly on the Houston side, and you know what? If it burns me, it burns me. But I am willing to at least take a stand there with some lineups because I'm pretty certain that these guys will go overlooked, and that's pretty much what it comes down to. I also think Dion Lewis, if this Tennessee offensive line, is as in bad shape as it is, you would have to think that Lewis is a much better play here than obviously than Derrick Henry.
Yeah, no doubt. He's in the McCaffrey bucket where I don't see a game script where Dion Lewis is not involved heavily.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's move on then, talking Tampa and Philly. You and I, along with Andrew Barron, talked about this on Three Fellas Talking Football, which if you did not watch on Wednesday, definitely catch it in week 3 or on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Get you ready for the Thursday game and then take a first look at the Sunday games. It's a lot of fun and really just in-depth analytical talk that I think will help you become a better player as well. But Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't really face a whole lot of pressure, and especially when he didn't. He just had time to throw, and he made it work. Mike Evans crushed Marshawn Lattimore. The secondary for the Saints looked awful. Deshaun Jackson only played 30% of snaps and made the most of it. But now you faced, the best defensive line, or at least the best pass rush in the league. What do you think about Fitzpatrick? What do you think? How do you think Tampa Bay's offense fares this week against a much different defense than the Saints?
I have no interest in Tampa. I'm more on the Eagles defense side, and I'm not really going there just because I started to find these cheaper defenses that we kind of talked about with the Redskins and the Texans. But this is a spot, yeah, good for Tampa. That was a very impressive going into the Superdome and whatnot. I think they're going to have tough sledding here. Not that they're going to get crushed, but I don't think we see anything that resembles what we saw last week. I don't have a Bucs player on any roster right now.
Neither do I.
Okay.
And Peyton Barber is going to pop up in a lot of projections because he's cheap. You want to play a little bit of him, fine. But I'm not really high on Peyton Barber because I think you're talking about a guy that never had 20 receptions in a season in his career, including college. DeQuiz Rodgers is going to be the third down back. If they go, it's not easy. It's not easy to get a ground game going against this Eagles defense. I think it could be tough sledding for sure. And especially with Nigel Bradham back, he helps the run defense out quite a bit. Yeah, not big there. If anybody, it would probably be Mike Evans because we saw what Julio did to Ronald Darby, who actually had a good game, all things considered.
He played well, actually.
Yeah. He just, he kept him out of the end zone, and that's what mattered. But I don't have anything from Tampa either. If you wanted to take a stab at like a Chris Godwin, I understand that. But with Jackson playing, it definitely takes some shine off of that. So I don't see myself going there. What about on the Philadelphia side of this game? I'll say quickly that Darren Sproles last week saw 40% of snaps. He split snaps 29-29 with Ajayi, but he was the only running back to see any targets in the passing game, saw 7 of them with a 21% market share, and right now is way more of a nuisance than an asset, especially from fantasy sense. And now he's out. How do you think it affects Clement and Ajayi and the rest of this offense? Because I think it does. I just don't know how much you need to go here.
It's definitely going to help them. Clement should pick up some of those targets. Ajayi maybe gets more of the role. He was very fortunate to salvage that game. He found the end zone twice, and that's what did it. He was close to just having the worst, 48 yards, 4.8 points style. It's funny. I saw the news and I thought I would get more of these guys, and I ultimately didn't even get there. They're closer to being in play for me, but this is a game that I'm pretty far away from in all facets.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a ton of it either. I have a little – you talk about value. Well, I'm going to do it to you. I do have a little bit of Mike Wallace.
Oh, wow.
It's scary. It's unfortunate. But, he saw a few deep targets last week, real deep, that were overthrown. And while you can't rely really on Nick Foles to get you the ball, this Bucs team is a lot worse in pass coverage than the Falcons are. And if I'm going to play a guy at sub 4K, I don't mind taking a shot on somebody that has the 60-yard touchdown upside, right? So it's not that I have faith in him. We're talking 150 lineups where I'll have about like 5% or so. But in the event that Wallace and Foles do connect on one of those, well, it's going to do me a lot of favors because you really only need one. And if you get 2, you're sitting real pretty. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, that's a Travis Benjamin formula. Like
exactly.
You only need 1 or 2 catches to probably get there.
Right, absolutely. So then we'll move on to Pittsburgh and Kansas City. This is the chalkiest game of the day for sure. I don't really think there's any question here. If you'd like to dispute that, please speak now. But I don't think you do.
Nope.
Yeah. Right now, the over-under is a slate high 52. It was up to 53.5, though. It came down to 52. It's still high. Spreads at 4.5 points. Steelers implied total is 28.3, third highest on the day. Let's start with the Steelers because on Thursday, you and I and Andrew mentioned that we really like this team, and sometimes even with chalk, you have to cave sometimes.
Absolutely. Antonio Brown was a spot that I knew it was going to be popular. I knew I certainly wasn't the only one seeing it, and I don't care. I'm going way overweight. I just don't see many scenarios where he doesn't get his. Even in bad games, quote unquote bad games, he seems to have 9 for 90 and a touchdown. And obviously the upside is through the roof. The rest of the Steelers, Juju, if you want to be a little different, no problem there. Connor is a guy I'm using in cash. I'm not as high as everyone else again on him. If the workload is what we saw last week, I probably will regret that. I did not think that was going to be the case last week. I think they tone it down a bit this week, but if they keep going with the Le'Veon at 6,700, yeah, I mean,
I think they're gonna, man. Like, okay, let me just put it to you this way. he played. This is pretty incredible. He played 92% of the snaps. You know,
Yeah, that's insane.
very infrequently do running backs see that. I mean, let me put it in perspective. Gurley played 94% of snaps last week, right?
Mhm.
Kamara played 81%. Like when you're talking about like the highest snap counts among running backs, he was up there, right? He was up there. It's let's see, 94. Elliott played 92. So I was sorting the spreadsheet. So Elliott and Connor both saw the second most snaps of any running back last week. And then when you talk about carries, well, it's not even close, right? Because Connor was the only running back on this team to see a carry, if I recall correctly.
That's
So, yeah, I don't think it changes, man. I think if he's seeing almost 100% of snaps and is literally the only back used, I don't know what they can do to get away from that.
If that's the case, then again, I'm going to probably be playing a little catch up there. I do think that, in cash, I think it's insane not to go there in cash. I don't know why anyone would do that. But for tournaments, there are some backs on the other side of this game. If you want to be different, Kareem Hunt is a guy that I have a little of. And I mostly paid up. I went to McCaffrey. I went to David Johnson, some other dudes. So again, it's just it's a workload thing. That's where we differ. I'm not doubting this guy's talent. I like Connor. I thought he was going to be a good player, and he is. So we'll see. And this is a game that I expect the Steelers to win. The game script is fine for him, but Antonio Brown is the guy that I want from the Steelers.
Yeah, I love Antonio Brown. By the way, Vance McDonald back, so Jesse James doesn't really provide any value there. He's pretty much touchdown or bust. But I'm going to have a little juju too, just because he's too talented not to in this game. Evan Silva tweeted out a couple days ago that Rivers would have had over 500 passing yards, and he would have also had 4 touchdowns, maybe 5, if Terrell Williams and Benjamin hadn't dropped like 50-yard bombs and touchdown each. This Kansas City defense is not good. Like, yeah, they won last week thanks to super efficient Tyreek Hill, punt returning, receiving, Mahomes not making any mistakes. This is not a good defense. They are bad, man. So I want to know what you're making of the Chiefs team. Patrick Mahomes right now, when you're looking at like projected ownership on this guy, he is looking like he is going to be up there at quarterback. And, maybe this is a mistake. I think this is probably going to be one spot that I'm taking a stand against loading up on Mahomes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any interest there. Again, I don't. If people watching the show, I don't want to say, when I say I have no interest there, it doesn't mean don't play him if you like the spot. I see why people like that spot, but
Right.
for me, there are just other quarterbacks that I prefer. I think this is a totally different situation, and we're going to see. I've been harping on this all week. Mahomes has incredible abilities. We saw it last week. He's also going to have games where he's really struggling and making big mistakes. And that's why another defense is the Steelers if you want to be really aggressive. I'm not on him and Tyreek Hill. I don't mind attacking Kareem Hunt a little and Travis Kelce because they're going to be in no man's land. The problem I had, I went to get them in a lot of spots, and I just needed to pay down. You're paying, especially at tight end. We've been talking about this. It's hard to pay $6,000 for Travis Kelce.
It's really tough. I mean, I wanted to do it, and it's just really, really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no matter how much you're right. No, you're absolutely right. It's not easy to do. It's really tough. Even Tyreek Hill, like, as much as I love his upside, how much Tyreek Hill can you actually get into lineups without sacrificing a lot elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, he's always every week he has just the massive ceiling, just the way he plays. But I'll still continue to say that he has a floor that's lower than some of these other guys, and he's priced. He's getting up there. You really can't sneak him in. And on a slate like this, I did not have room. You just got to kind of hope that they can avoid the big play. We talked a lot on the Thursday show. A little different defense. Steelers go more zone. It is tougher for a guy like Tyreek Hill. He's incredible. I mean, he's the fastest guy I've seen in a long time. But if they can keep him in check, that puts me probably ahead of a good amount of the field.
Agreed. It's just a game that you're going to want to have a decent amount of, no matter how you cut it. Like it just is. And yeah, I love Antonio Brown, as do you. I love James Conner a lot more than you. And I like Ben. Are you concerned at all about his elbow? Because I'm playing him, man. I just got it. I'm not doing it.
No, he's just one of the many quarterbacks that I have in play. No concerns.
Yeah, agreed. All right, then let's move on talking about the Jets and Miami. You guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in chat on YouTube, Twitch, or if you're in Slack, you can do that as well. Prefer you do it in YouTube. Makes it a lot easier for me to put them all into one spot. But we'll keep moving on here. Jets and Miami. Ryan Tannehill and Sam Darnold. Whoo, barn burner here, baby. I think the only guy from this game I have, Ben, is I think the only guy I have is Quincy Enunwa.
I have a little Amendola, just because, where I think that the floor will still be there. He had a really bad game last week. Not chasing Stills, not chasing Robbie Anderson. This is one, we got 13 of them. This is one I'm putting to the side. I don't have much.
Enunwa to me is very interesting, though.
Yeah, he was great. He really helped me on the 2-gamer. I was very heavy on him, and he was good, really good.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible is he had the highest market share of targets of any receiver in the league last week.
Yeah.
You know what his market share was?
Must have been high, obviously.
48%.
I should have guessed. I was going to say 50%. Good. That's incredible. He really looked good. Now, we'll see how it all shakes out. The Jets are not that good, obviously, but the Dolphins coming in don't scare me. I don't see any reason why Enunwa can't have another pretty solid game.
Well, and he's kind of a perfect chain-moving type wide receiver for a guy in Darnold who they're kind of trying to reel in a bit. He really didn't make any deep throws. I think just one or two to Robbie Anderson, but he only threw the ball 21 times. I don't think he'll have that luxury again, but Enunwa saw 10 of those 21 targets. I do like that here. I think that bodes well for a guy who is going to be or is very, very cheap. And you know what? If you're getting him at a discount, Enunwa is another guy that I think at 4,700 makes for a very strong play on FanDuel. Enunwa is coming in at 5K, which really isn't bad at all when you consider he's the same price as Jermaine Kearse and Jeremy Curley and Chester Rogers. So
yeah,
that's all I have, though, Ben. Do you have anything else?
I really don't. It's a big slate. This is one I didn't have much interest in.
Yeah, I don't hate Drake, but I can't fit him with all the other running backs that I like. So, he's going to be an odd man out. All right, talk to me about Buffalo and the LA Chargers. Right now, you're looking at a 7.5-point spread. Obviously, Rivers and the Chargers are 7.5-point road dogs. A ugly 41.5 over under here. Curious to see where you're at on the Chargers today.
It's strange. Rivers was a guy I used a ton of last week. Keenan Allen's the same. They just kind of got weaseled out, and it's for nothing they did. They were both good. They were playing catch up. Really ugly performance. Now they're going to Buffalo. I don't have much of this Chargers team. Even Melvin Gordon, who I like, I just couldn't get as much exposure as I thought. I'm going to try to get a little more of him because he's just talk about another guy in the Connor realm. He's getting catches and touches seemingly no matter what the game script is. But overall in the Chargers, I'm not really there. And I it's for nothing other than opportunity cost.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Does that scare you?
Yeah, it actually scares the shit out of me. It's horrifying. Like I say this every week. Melvin Gordon is one of those guys that even if he's not efficient, gets so much work. He led the team in carries and in targets last week. He had 13 targets. They were playing from behind, but even in the event that Melvin Gordon and the Chargers are playing with the lead, Gordon's probably still going to see like 25 carries. So it's tough for him to flop is what it is. It's tough for him to be really bad. Projections keep spitting him out, and it scares me, but I continue to limit my exposure to Melvin Gordon in this game. I feel like he could have one of these like 75 yards and a touchdown with 2 reception type games, I'm the more I think about it, like I would talk nobody off of Melvin Gordon or Keenan Allen. Let's get that clear, and I think you would agree.
Yep.
But it's tough in terms of prioritizing them, right? Like someone asked a question about Nelson Aguilar in chat. I don't mind Aguilar. I actually think this matchup is very good for him, especially considering the injuries to Tampa. But like, do you prioritize him over Jarvis and a lot of other guys in that price range? That's what makes it really, really tough today, Ben.
That's the thing I'm struggling with the most. There's a lot of guys that the reason I don't have them is just because I couldn't get them based on the number of teams I have and the number of other players in the similar range.
Exactly. That's exactly what it comes down to. And it's a little bit scary, but you know what? At the same time, would you rather have more Gurley or Melvin Gordon? And that's kind of where I'm at. Like I'd rather get more Gurley in there.
Yeah, and for me, it's not just Gurley. There's a couple others up top, like
sure.
I like David Johnson, and it adds up very quickly.
Yeah, and I'm just using Gurley as one example, but Absolutely. There are many of them. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on LaShawn McCoy? 5,700 on DraftKings, pretty cheap.
I'm in. Yeah, this is going to be an important guy for me. I think the Bills are going to play better. I mean, they have to play better. How much better, we'll see. But I expect at home with a quarterback that can't be worse for them to get back to they're not going to be a good team this year. There's no doubt about it. But there's a blueprint there for Josh Allen to pepper this guy with. I don't see any way that the Bills can't just lean on Shady as heavily as possible. You mentioned how effective he is, or I should say ineffective on the road, better at home. 5,700, I don't think he will be popular just because the Bills are a joke. I think this is the kind of game where he can lean on some volume to get there, even if it's not the prettiest. Give him 8 catches, give him a handful of carries, maybe he finds that end zone.
I agree. You want to talk about being scary. Anyone you play in this game is scary from the Bills. Anyone you don't play is going to be scary too. Sure. But quite frankly, I think the only guy I'd have any interest in on the Bills side is Shady, and it's really because of price. His home road splits are dramatic, and the thing is, like Peterman got benched before converting a first down last week. Like the only way this team gets any movement on offense is if you heavily involve LaShawn McCoy both as a running back, as a rusher, and as a receiver. There is zero other way. None of these receivers are going to get separation. It's the only way.
Yes, and if they don't want to get Josh Allen straight murdered, they have to get the ball out quickly. There's no way with this offensive line that he should be throwing downfield. It just funnels to Shady every single time.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Now, that is not to say that Shady can't get bottled up even if he sees 25 touches.
Definitely. But you talked about it early. If he sees 25 touches at 5,700, I'll live with it.
Exactly. Volume. The volume is important. I like Tevin Coleman over Shady, but I will have a little bit of Shady as well. Okay. Green Bay and Minnesota. Aaron Rodgers is officially active. No surprise there. Someone called him like the drama queen, the biggest drama queen in the NFL. I won't weigh in on that, but he is active. I don't know if he's a drama queen. The guy's had legitimate season-ending injuries like 400 times, and he's a boss. Yeah. I mean, even though he crushes the Eagles every time we play. But what are your thoughts here on this team? It's a tough defense they're facing. Xavier Rhodes is probably going to see a whole lot of Devontae Adams, which does not bode well for Devontae Adams. When you look at where these guys line up, Rhodes lined up last year, I think 69% of the time on the right side, 27 on the left. Adams was 46 on the left, 34 on the right. But I mean, you would think that Devontae Adams sees the most of Xavier Rhodes here, which I think could bode well for Randall Cobb. This is a very interesting spot for Randall Cobb, in my opinion.
He's the guy that he's pretty much the only guy I have exposure to in this whole game. He's 4,600, big game last week. I'm just hoping that he can kind of Amendola it in the sense of just get the targets, grab some easy catches, and don't kill my lineups. He was a lot of times a team I really liked. I had that exact salary left, and that's where I landed. It's a tricky game. Vikings defense, very good. No interest in Rodgers. I'm not doing anything there. Jimmy Graham, I want to pull the trigger, but there's so many tight ends. Most of them are cheaper. The savings was too hard to pass up.
Agreed. By the way, I just want to go back 1 second and say, as crazy as this sounds, I'm going to have a little bit of Sammy Watkins from the
Oh yeah,
Chiefs
I see
because
that.
because he's a way to get really cheap exposure there, and it's not a DeAnthony Thomas or a Demarcus Robinson or a Chris Conley. Look, Watkins is not building chemistry with any quarterback he plays with recently, but he did play almost every single snap. He did still see 5 targets, which was a 20% market share. At that price, it's not crazy. And he is a big body in the red zone. So I'm just throwing it out there. I don't think Watkins, I think I have 10% of him right now. I don't think it's totally insane. I agree with you here. Cobb is my one guy, but I will also have some Dalvin Cook on the other side. I think this is a very enticing spot for Dalvin Cook.
That's interesting.
No interest, huh?
It's not that I have no interest. It's just when I paid up for running back, I went over the top or I punted it. I didn't.
Okay.
And where there are a couple times where I landed in that range, I went to Kareem Hunt.
Got it.
Interesting though. I see that, especially if I should have more interest because I want to get away from Connor, I think a little more than most. And Dalvin Cook's the guy. I'm gonna have to look at that after the show. But right now I don't have any.
All right. Yeah, I don't think it's a crazy play at all. I expect Dalvin Cook to be heavily involved in basically like every facet of this game. And again, that always is a good thing when you're talking about being able to rack the points up. I'm not worried about Latavius Murray. How about Saints and Cleveland? Drew Brees at the Dome. I was like, yeah, they'll be playing from ahead this game, no doubt about it. 10-point favorites, exactly the same as last week. But I don't see that being the case again. Ben, I'll tell you what though, I'm having a tough time not loving Jarvis Landry after 15 targets last week. No Josh Gordon this week. Excellent rapport with Tyrod Taylor, and he was running deeper routes last week than he ever has in previous seasons with Miami. Yards bodes well for him. I like Landry. I even like Njoku in this game. Where are you going? Obviously, the Saints are in a favorable spot too.
I'm on Landry. He's always great. Full PPR, he just racks up the points, even when he's not doing much. And I see that again this week. The Browns they're gonna be if they're not playing from behind, I'm gonna really have to give up on the sport because this seems like a real bad spot. Like if they can't, after the Saints let one get away at home, they got to be pretty angry. So yeah, I don't mind Landry. Njoku, just throw him in the mix.
I'm back.
Not cool. Wait, we got it? All right, let's see here. Let me refresh and see where we are. Yep. All right, we're back. Apologies if you heard some language there that wasn't necessarily yeah. Anyway, I don't know where we cut out, but Ben and I were just talking about Higgins definitely is interesting. I don't feel confident at all, but he's the bare minimum. The bare minimum. last week, even with Gordon playing 78% of snaps, Higgins played 61% of snaps and did have 4 targets. So, yeah, I don't think it's insane. Like, if you wanted to load up on expensive players, Higgins is not the craziest play. That's all I'm saying, Ben. He's really cheap.
If you're taking a real stab, but other than that, I think it's kind of risky.
Oh, it's certainly risky. It's certainly risky. He's just really cheap. And I think you could also make the argument that you could just go to like a $2,700 tight end or $2,900 tight end and expect same or better production, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right. I agree.
San Francisco and Detroit. Here's my off the radar game. I think I said this too on Thursday. Obviously, I'm going to let you talk about San Francisco and just have at it. But I'm interested in Detroit, man. Everyone is so low on this Detroit team. But Matthew Stafford, even last season, you look at like the yardage totals, right? He was over 290 yards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times. Like, I think he's had 7 300-yard games. The guy has legitimate upside. I'm not backing up just because of one terrible game. Everyone's like, oh, they're broken. They still have the same offensive coordinator as last year. They still have Tate, Marvin Jones, Golladay, and maybe better running backs, even though I'm not sure if I buy into Curry and Johnson yet. Like, I just think there's upside in Matthew Stafford here, as long as they change those hand signs, which apparently the Jets knew about last week.
I think that's fair. I don't mind Stafford. Golladay, I mean, he was very impressive. The game script couldn't have been better for him. They were throwing like banshees. I think they'll be more competitive, of course. So I don't mind taking some steps. They do have a kind of a spread it out kind of offense where it's not concentrated, where you can key on, especially with Golladay emerging, that muddies the waters. It used to just be Tate and Marvin Jones. I'm more interested on the other side. Kittle is a guy, he's going to be popular, and I don't even like him that much, but I don't know how you avoid this guy, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's that, like, I'm not sold on this spot, but at the same time, it's like, all right, where is Jimmy going with the ball? I am lower on Pettis than most. I have some shares, but I think his floor is pretty murky, whereas if Kittle's seeing the targets that I expect him to be, I don't know how I really pass that up. So I hope that doesn't blow up in my face. It's where I'm going. He's a key piece, and he's one. I paired him up with some even cheaper tight ends to really make room for the ABs and Julios of the world.
Yeah, I don't think it's crazy. I don't think it's crazy at all. But yeah, I'm gonna have both sides of this one, no doubt about it. I mean, I'm gonna have I have some Jimmy G. I have a lot of Kittle, even though, like you said, I don't love him. But how do you not play him here? That's the problem. I have a little bit of. Go ahead.
We'll get to the game. There's a couple left. Like, I would love to go get someone like Gronk, of course, but I can't even imagine doing that on a slate like this.
Nope. Hey, I'll be honest with you. I have a lot of Kenny Golladay, though. Like,
I have him in cash.
Yeah, there you go. I think I have 25% in tournaments, which is a decent amount for any receiver. Yeah, I have a good amount. I have Geronimo Allison too. I don't know if we talked about him in the Green Bay game, did we?
No, we didn't. We mentioned Cobb, and I think that's fine. Devontae Adams is the one who really has got a problem because he's seen the road so much. So if you want to look to the other Green Bay targets with Rodgers under center, I think have at it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I have a decent amount of Allison. I just think at 3,800 with Rodgers as his quarterback, playing 3/4 of the snaps, 8 targets last week, albeit playing from behind, still like it. And he was targeted in the end zone and scored. I think Allison's perfectly fine. There's another cheap guy if you are interested. Let's keep going here then. We'll get to the Rams and Arizona. How you like David Johnson again, huh?
I do. I think he played. I think the Cardinals and him had as bad of a game as you could really have, and he wasn't. I'm buying into the fact that we're not going to see 300 winning large field tournaments. If that's the case, I'm going to have to reevaluate. But I look at David Johnson. He was not good. I'm not saying he was, but he wasn't. He didn't get 6 points. He had 18 last week, and it was magnified once again by the ridiculous scoring. If the Cardinals have any chance to hang in, I think they're going to attack similar to how the Raiders did. Jared Cook and Jalen Richard, well, they have David Johnson who can actually do things, and Ricky Seals-Jones. I don't know why they would try to test Peters and Tress Talib running game. They're going to be playing from behind. So, yeah, I think as a sneaky high-end running back, David Johnson definitely in play.
All right. I don't really have much this week, but I get it.
Have them all. It's tough. That's the tricky part. You got to fade guys you like.
Exactly. You cannot have them all. And I like a lot of running backs, so it's going to be tough for me. I love Todd Gurley. He didn't really get – yeah, he is, but I'm going to be playing him. He didn't have much work in the first half last week, but then just absolutely erupted in the second half to nobody's surprise. So Todd Gurley, I have quite a bit of this week. I just think it's too good a spot to pass up. I expect to see big-time production from him. I'd be very surprised if Gurley doesn't erupt here. Against a Cardinals defense that last week, by the way, allowed Chris Thompson to have a monster game on both facets, 5 for 65 and 6 for 63 and a touchdown, and Adrian Peterson to go off for 26 for 96 and 2 receptions for 70 yards. Yes, you better believe I'm going to have a lot of Todd Gurley, who essentially always gets all of the work. Yeah, big on Todd Gurley today. I don't see how you couldn't be. I think Cooper Kupp's interesting too. They don't use their tight end, so they use him a lot in the red zone. Anyone else for you in this one?
No, there's no arguing with Gurley. It's just a matter of how many teams can I get him on with the big-time receivers. I made room for sure. I didn't want 0, but I wish I could get more, to be honest.
All right, we got 2 to go here. We got to speed it up a little bit. New England and Jacksonville. What do you got for me?
Not much, to be honest. It's a great game to watch, but I'm not sure it's a great fantasy game. If you want to look to James White, I'm sure he will be involved regardless of Burkhead and Sony Michel's status. I didn't make much room for anyone. TJ Yeldon, I don't think Fournette will play. If you want to look there, I think it's more of a cash play than a tournament play. I don't have much. Keelan Cole and Dede, they're home run targets that I think we saw last week. It's not as reliable as some people may have thought. They're still Jacksonville's passing game.
Totally. Yeah, that was one of the chalk plays that
the only thing I got right on the chalk side was him.
Oh, man. All right. I don't have much. I mean, TJ Yeldon, obviously people are going to have, but he's not that cheap, right?
No, he's not.
So I don't have much TJ Yeldon.
Cash for me, maybe. That's really where I'm at. Evan Coleman over him all day.
That's where I'm at. Me too. Like, I don't have an issue with Yeldon because of the workload, but this is not a spot. I'm going to take more of a stand here and have less TJ Yeldon than most. I like more guys in his price range, and I think an interesting pivot is obviously LaShawn McCoy at a very similar price point.
Yep.
All right, last game here. And obviously on the New England side, look, it's Tom Brady. He's going to find ways to get the ball to his guys. It's just I don't really feel like taking a gamble on who. Like, it's already a tough matchup, Ben, so I don't really want to guess whether it's going to be Gronk or Hogan or Michelle now that he's back, or James White. Like, if anyone, I'd probably go James White, but I still just have trouble taking a stand and playing heavy on anyone here.
Mm-hmm. James White's the only one I have, and it's not that much.
All right, last one, Denver and Oakland. Oakland in a similar situation as last week. You're going to have a pass rush, this time coming from the outside, but you're going to have a good pass rush, good corners, and they're probably going to get decimated in Denver.
Yep. Broncos defense probably my favorite on the whole slate. I think you can go right back to Emmanuel Sanders or Demaryius, who was overshadowed, but he had a fine game too, and his price has not adjusted. I really like that spot. Jalen Richard, I just pray if I use him that this wasn't a horrible move. He saw 11 targets last week. It was in garbage time. I think they're going to be a similar game script, so I'm not sure why that wouldn't happen again. I think at that price, if you really need a punt running back, you can go there.
Yeah, me too. I don't think it's crazy. Look, here's the thing. 30 of 39 targets went to tight ends and running backs last week for the Broncos, or for the Raiders.
Yeah.
And you could see a similar situation. I don't think Amari and Jordy are going to have a whole lot of breathing room in this game. I simply don't. And I don't think Marshawn Lynch is going to get much going on the ground. So I don't have an issue with Jalen Richard. The only problem is opportunity cost. Do you want to pay down all the way at running back? If you do, I don't hate it. The other side, do you have any interest? You talked about the receivers, and I think Sanders and Thomas are both fine. Are you interested in Royce Freeman? Because I'm not willing to take – I don't really want to take the risk on whether Joseph is going to give the hot hand carries to Phillip Lindsay or Freeman. I don't really have much of either.
No, I think Royce Freeman's going to be a fine player, and he's going to have some value here and there, but we still are in the feeling out. I tried to jump on him last week. It was a big mistake. I think we see, like you said, a hot hand situation where maybe he has the hot hand this week, but we really don't know.
All right. Well, that sounds good to me. If you have any questions after the show, feel free to hit us up in Slack or on Twitter. You can find us at JazzRaz, _Z, DFS, myself at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D. You got it on the screens right here. Stick around. Coming up next, Josh Engelman and Spag's going to take you up to lock 1 p.m. Week 2. Good luck. We will see you back here on the game plan next week. Let's win some money here, Ben.
Gonna try.
I'm going to try. All right. Take it easy.